Technology changes way faster, as we mentioned, than it has ever before, which means the reskilling that you need to do over the course of your career is meaningful.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Greetings and welcome along to this episode of the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain. Recently, I attended SAP's Tech Ed event in Bangalore, India. Now, during this trip, I had the privilege of spending time with Max Wessel, who's the Chief Learning Officer at SAP based in the United States. Max shared with me, as we chatted on the podcast, around SAP's goals of creating learning opportunities for everyone within their ecosystem, from their own internal team members through their partners and their clients around the world. He shared insights into their approach to that internal learning, onboarding and continuous upskilling, along with exploring the impact of artificial intelligence on the future of learning, the evolving role of business in education and that crossover, and the potential changes that are coming down the pike in terms of higher education delivery. So some really great insights. I think you're going to enjoy this one. Before we jump in, of course, a big thank you to our show partners, 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, and Gorilla Technology for their continued support. All right, let's go.
Well, great to have you on the podcast, Max. Very keen to hear more about what are your goals, what are your responsibilities in leading from a learning and a training perspective?
First and foremost, SAP Learning has a singular mission. We talk about it a lot. We are out there. We exist to create opportunity through learning and development for all. We truly believe that learning about SAP, our products, technologies, is a way for everyone in the existing SAP ecosystem and those who want to join us to build professional and personal growth. And so within the SAP Learning organization, we take responsibility for the training and development of customers, of partners, of SAP's own employees. We have about 26 million people a year who join us on the SAP community. We, this year, are on track to educate 1.7 million people formally through SAP Learning resources. And we spend a lot of our time as well, not only giving them the basic understanding of technologies, but also doing deep technical education, getting them all the way through to certification and professional growth from that perspective.
Well, there's a lot that you're dealing with. I guess for a lot of our listeners, they're going to be very interested in learning broadly across their internal teams. Walk us through, how do you take care of that for your internal people? Because there will be a whole mix of learning that's needed. Some of it is very much technological. Some of it is more self sort of focused and so on. I'm sure there's a pretty broad range of learning options that are available.
So the really interesting point that we're in right now is that the world is moving faster than it ever has been before. And we just spent an hour this morning listening to a keynote where everything from a technical introduction perspective was about a technology that largely was unknown to the world a year ago. So when you think about the nature of technology skilling and technical skill progression, it's just moving at such a rate that for everybody who's listening to this podcast and thinking about their internal learning programs, it couldn't be more critical. You can't future-proof an organization for the next decade, let alone the next, 2 decades, if you are not investing a meaningful amount in skilling your people on a continuous basis and retraining folks when skills change, and then, frankly, on helping to onboard folks in the right fashion. And so when we think about our internal programs, that's really what we think about. We think about how do we create the best platform for folks to join SAP and learn about what it is to be successful in role. How do we provide continuous upskilling opportunities through a mixture of hands-on sessions, of gamified challenges, through self-service, e-learning, and all the way through to how do we reskill folks. Because the nature of what it is to be a product manager, for instance, in a world where you're getting continuous telemetry from a product versus one where a decade ago you really needed to go out and do a lot of qualitative research and user studies to get the same insight, it's just different. So a lot of what we focus on today is really understanding the role that exists in the world, how technology changes have affected the way people perform those roles, and then making sure we build a mixture of learning programs that take folks forward. And the whole reason I bring this up is because you said mixture of technical and soft skills. I think those two things are getting closer and closer together every day. And Gen AI is the perfect catalyst for that conversation, because a lot of what Gen AI is about will be for a developer who has an agent working in console. How do you help them ask the right questions? How do they think about the world in the right way? How do they articulate an idea? Those aren't traditionally technical skills, but they have absolutely profound impact in a technical world where you're engaging with a co-pilot in written word.
Yeah, absolutely. So how quickly do you start the learning journey when you're onboarding somebody? You know, what does that look like? What are you doing on day one of somebody joining SAP?
At SAP, we spend the first 2 weeks learning for every employee. So first week, you're learning about SAP, you're learning about our culture, our systems, our operating processes. The second week, you're learning about your role, and then you go on a year-long journey where during your first year, you'll periodically reconvene with the folks that you started with, checking in, developing more skills, and that obviously continues throughout your career. So this is something that is core to how we succeed and grow our folks in the future. It's also really a very deep-seated part of what we do with our partners, because at SAP, we have 107,000 of the brightest folks in the world, but we also have 1.2-ish million professional consultants out there in our ecosystem right now. And for them, we also think about what are the learning resources we make sure they have available to them. How are they onboarded in their companies, and how are they skilled over the course of their careers?
And thinking around the role of AI, how does that change the learning, whether it's sort of now or looking a few years out? Are you expecting to be able to hand over a lot more to the AI in terms of being able to guide people's learning experiences?
I mean, if you think about the nature of the learning market, there have been AI-driven experiences for years. In SuccessFactors right now, our learning platform, you can get AI recommendations around what is it you should know based on your role, what is it we think you might want to learn based on your preferences, and I think that type of experience enrichment is both present and appreciated in the market today. But when you think about Gen AI, it's a different ballgame entirely. And I think about this in terms of personal experience. I was very lucky. I got to work for one of my heroes for 2 years. And I sat outside his office, and 15 minutes a day in the morning and 15 minutes a day in the afternoon, I got to sit down and just catch up, ask questions, and hear what was on his mind. And I thought about that mentor relationship as the sort of perfect exercise of mastery learning. You have the master in front of you, you go off during the day, you do the work, you ask the questions, you move forward. I worked for a person who let one individual a year do that. And I was remarkably lucky. But that is unscalable. And so we built a whole system of learning in the world around how to take that type of mastery learning process, which is prevalent for a millennia, and shift it from this master-apprentice model to factory model, where we brought people into school environments, we gave them a standardized curriculum, we moved them from one class to the next class on an annual basis. And we took that factory model and we leveraged all the tools of the age to take it online and give people even more. But we moved to this standard learning approach. Now you introduce Gen AI and everybody's back to the master apprentice model, except it's scalable.
Yeah, that's
I can
amazing.
ask the questions I have. And so we've already been experimenting with this at SAP. If you go to guide.learning.sap.com, you can ask a question of our learning content, and you'll both get a sort of a snip of an answer, but you'll get semantic match between the question you have and the best content we offer. And we're working to sort of diligently migrate that forward to a model where you can ask in-context questions, like you saw from Duel today on the keynote.
So where we're going, you'll really be able to have that personalized, coach that will be nudging you in a particular direction, able to really teach you, whatever you need to know.
Yeah, it will be transformative in that fashion. And I think of it somewhat similarly to that master apprentice model or a librarian in a library. There will still be resources that you'll want to use that are different than just a conversational interaction. If you're a PhD student writing your thesis in astrophysics, you still want to go at some point and do primary research. You want to get hands-on, or you want to go read a book. And what we need to do as learning professionals and in the SAP ecosystem is make sure we have all of those modalities of learning available, but we leverage the AI to make sure that the experience of finding the right thing at the right time is perfect for each learner.
And so, I guess sort of stepping back a little bit, the investments into developing the technology that support learning isn't just going to be relevant to business, is it? This is going to be right across the whole, sphere of education, which has, largely been the same for a very, very long time.
I think education as a whole is about to change. I also think business is going to play an increasing role in education. I mentioned some of the numbers around the size of the SAP ecosystem, the 26 million people a year who come to our community. Those individuals graduated from university at 21, 22. 50% of the children born today are estimated to live to 100 in much of the developed world. Advances in healthcare are profound. The cost of delivery is going down. Everybody's income is raising. Think about that 80-year gap from when you graduate with skills from university to your expected end date, proverbially. That is 80 years of technology changing. And technology changes way faster, as we mentioned, than it has ever before, which means the reskilling that you need to do over the course of your career is meaningful. And who can play that role better than business at some level, right? Because every corporation in the world that relies on a successful ecosystem to work needs to present the learning opportunities that make that possible. So if you're podcasting, right, there are platforms that rely on your success, and they want to make sure that you get educated on the right tools to make that work. And SAP is just the same. We feel that it's very important for us to continue to invest in the professional success of those in our ecosystem. So I think AI will change education, and I think it will also allow corporations to play a bigger and bigger role in reskilling.
It seems to me that for a large entity like SAP, you're able to achieve things that smaller entities aren't going to be able to do, right? Because you've just got such deep resources. You've got such a big base of people to draw from around the world, right? And so that puts you in a unique position compared to smaller local entities and so on. How do you sort of see this this developing in the future?
I think that's right, but there are things that large organizations can do well, and there are also things that you need a vibrant ecosystem for. And one of the things that we don't fool ourselves about is the importance of smaller organizations for any large platform style company. And so for SAP, we have thousands of partners who are building and deploying application in our ecosystem, and so we need to give them a stage by which to engage. For instance, I mentioned how many people are going to the SAP community. A lot of that is peer-to-peer education, so SAP users, but we also have partners who use that platform to take advantage of the same opportunity for reskilling, education, for customer acquisition. And I think the evolution that we'll see in the world with more and more global businesses distributing their products around the world and allowing people to build on top of them is more and more savvy from those organizations about how to make the small businesses and individual freelancers in their ecosystem successful.
Yeah, that's quite quite fascinating to think how things could develop, and I guess even looking at the sphere of conventional universities and the broader education sector in terms of what lessons they will be able to learn from businesses like SAP because of the sheer scale that you have and the ability to move forward and to leverage the latest of technology because you've got so much expertise to move at a fast pace there.
Yeah, I respect to some institutions that have done amazing work. MIT and Harvard launched a platform called edX. edX is now open to many institutions. We've partnered with them historically. I think Coursera has done great work in partnering with institutions. But I think one of the observations you make around scale is important. There are going to be, I think, profound changes in how higher education is delivered. One is the nature of a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree may change as people have access digitally to more of what's there. I think the other piece that's really interesting is in a world of video distribution, you look at vendors like Netflix and vendors like Google, very different models. Long tail for one, high volume, the other, very tightly controlled content. And both models work, but there aren't a lot of players in the middle where there isn't tight control of content or a long tail of distribution. In the education space, we see something that's very different, where we have lots of local universities that have appealed, to a geographic segment. And I think what we'll see when we see technology impact the higher education market is that local control starts to go away. That whole concept of, I'm going to school within driving distance is gone. And so I think we'll see that change. Everybody will have access to the best resources digitally. And you'll use your local community for experiences. And I think there will be a lot more professional certification. There will be a lot more tying of skill delivery directly to employment. And we're just excited at SAP to help play a role. So we partner with a lot of universities around the globe. We partner with employers and have partnered historically with some of these platform vendors like Coursera, which we announced last year, in order to help drive that change.
Oh, that's fascinating. Well, I realise we're probably out of time, but thank you very, very much, Max. And we'll look forward to how this world evolves from the learning perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Paul, for having me, and always excited to chime in on any of these subjects.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Max. Cheers.
Well, thanks everyone for listening in and joining me on this episode. A big thank you to our show partners, Gorilla Technology, HP, Spark, 2 Degrees, and 1NZ. And of course to SAP. Thank you for facilitating and taking me to your TechEd event in India. Really fascinating insights that were gained. And hope everyone's enjoyed this episode, but do stay tuned. We've got some really good episodes coming that cover some of the other learnings from my time in India. Lots of other great content through the summer as well. And if you're looking for other listening, look out for the NZ Business Podcast, some really fascinating interviews with leaders in the world of business and technology from across New Zealand. And if you're looking at maybe some new goals for 2024 from an investment perspective, then maybe go and have a look at the NZ Everyday Investor podcast. That's another one of our shows that's absolutely fantastic and well worth a listen. All right, Paul Spain signing out. Catch you on the next episode.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.